if we have faculty members that want to do things that don't match their sphere of influence and so forth, should we discourage that?
If it doesn't match their sphere of influence, that might be fine. If they're not competent to engage in it, then I might discourage them. So they say, oh my gosh, I have this new grant that focuses on the cutting edge of this research area in computing, and I want to design third grade curriculum to teach them that content. You're like, oh, that's lovely. But that might not be the most pedagogically relevant for some children to learn about the nuances of this cutting edge research that you're doing. Maybe make a 2-minute video that we can share as a department, but don't design curriculum and go into classrooms. Do you know what I mean? So maybe there are ways of coaching them. And I think trying to get at their underlying interests. What is it about going into a K-12 classroom that really excites you? Like what makes that seem fun? And there might be ways that there are other activities that they could get involved in. My understanding is we're going to have an ongoing bpcnet.org Slack channel where you might be able to post questions and have folks in the community be able to reply with other ideas. Like if someone's really interested in K-12 stuff but has no K-12 experience, I would recommend that they use the example activity for getting involved in the Aspirations in Computing Award. So this is an award run by the National Center for Women in Information Technology, and someone can sign up as a volunteer to review applications from women in high school and college who are interested in computing. And I think it's like, you're supporting the youth, but you're probably competent to review these applications. And it would be a big help. Thank you for the link, Luther. Okay, other questions? Oh, Ken, you've got a raised hand, I think.
Yes. So your whole point about not amplifying existing racism really speaks to me. Before I was a department chair, I was an associate dean, and that was exactly the work I was actually engaged in, was looking at changes to policy that helped us not do that. But one of the challenges I face with undergraduate enrollment in computer science is that we don't actually make the admission decisions. We have very little input into the admissions process. So if we go out and do outreach to high schools in Denver, there's no guarantee that the students we convince to come to CU will actually be admitted to our programs because we don't have control over that admissions decision. So what do you recommend in that space? I mean, we can definitely go and do outreach for the good of computing as a whole, but we have very little control of actually, saying to a student, come to us at CU and be able to guarantee that they can do that.
Yeah, and that's awesome. I asked Luther for the C4C link. So the National Center for Women in Information Technology has a resource for counselors for computing. And so I think that this is similar to the recommendations for working with your institutional research people, is like, you need to be friends with those admissions people and be like, oh, if you ever have, like, you might have to offer something to them, but this has a resource for counselors at the high school level to help them understand what computing is and that it's for everyone. And so I think that building relationships there can be really helpful and important, and there might be, and figuring out what they would want. Oh, do you need more tour guides who are computer science students? I will make that a service responsibility in my department every year to make sure that you've got those people. Do you need someone to come and talk at your events? I will make sure that we're doing that to build these relationships so that they can challenge their assumptions about who does computing, and make sure that they know that you don't only want students who have been programming since they were in the womb. That's not what your program is about, and they should really send you these great students that they are currently turning away. So I think that relationship building.
Yeah, +1. I think that's exactly what I have to do. I've got to just become friends with the admissions office.
Yeah, but Michelle says, I don't think this answers the question.
No, I think it does. I mean, if I want to have more control over the admissions process, I need to, approach that office, figure out what their procedures are, and see what they're open to, and see what we can do to influence.
And I think when your department has limited resources, I wouldn't prioritize activities that are good for the world, but don't benefit your department and your community and your campus culture. Do you know what I mean? So I might interest some 7th grade women in computing, And that should not be as high of a priority as, you know, revising my curriculum to be more effective, revising my pedagogy to be more effective, reducing my retention, or like reducing my attrition rates within various demographic groups. How do you dig into the data to identify?
Michelle has her hand up for a moment, sorry.
Oh yeah, so go ahead.
We're doing all those things you described. It makes no difference. I mean, when you're at a giant school and you're dealing with a closed admissions process, quite frankly, they employ an army of 30 to 40 people that visit high schools and that review applications. We started a new major in informatics, which by the way has wonderful demographics, and we wanted to have a written component to that application as a way to do some of the sorting you described, and they won't permit it.
Okay, Michelle, I want to interrupt you here for a second, and I want to say, you know, for some of us, there are going to be like really immovable pieces at our institution where we're like, oh shit, that works for you, and that's never ever going to work for me.
Yeah.
We have to work within that system. I want you to break down the walls you can, and there might be walls you can't break down, and this might be one wall you can't break down. But we just have to find all the walls that we can tear down and tear those down. And so I'm sorry that I'm sure you're not the, and maybe other people want to weigh in, I'm sure you're not the only one who, that one is totally immovable.
But there are ways of working around that, right? Like if you can't control the gender breakdown of the high school students that are coming into college, or the racial breakdown or the like, then you need to think instead about how you adjust your program to support that differential preparation, right? Can you make differential pathways? Can you adjust how you're teaching your courses? There are ways of working around the walls you can't destroy.
Yeah, and so like an example is at Harvey Mudd, we have multiple on-ramps into the major. So students who come in with tons and tons of experience, they're in a course all by themselves. And we focus within that course for students who have been programming since they were in the womb, in the ways in which, and helping them understand the ways in which their enthusiasm for computer science may be intimidating to others. And so the extent to which we're taking those students and we're saying, oh, you're going to be real toxic later on. It's not like we don't want you, but we need to help make sure that when you rejoin the rest of the stream, it's not super problematic. But yeah, that's infuriating, Michelle, that you are like trying to do all the things, but in these big contexts, it's not always possible. Where are we on questions? We have one in the chat from Laura, fairly lengthy, about how you find out why you have differences based on demography. I think the first piece is talking to students. Do you know what I mean? And so I think that this has come up earlier, is like engaging students, and some of this hypothesis generation I think can be really helpful. In my context, I've done that just with my advisees, like, oh, we're seeing this pattern. Do you have ideas? Is like a first step, and that might help you identify things that just like we could have, without the data at Berkeley when I was a grad student, identified that this was going to be a problem, but we happened to have the data to be able to demonstrate that this was a problem. But we could have just been like, oh gosh, APCS's is in Java, and then CS1 is not in Java, and CS2 is in Java. Like we could have identified the curricular problem independent of the data. And so I think there might be that method, and then students might have hypotheses. Maybe there are other ideas.
Erica?
Hello, I just have a quick question for you. The question that I have for you is that who is making the distinction whether this, the research opportunity is fitting for the person that actually proposed it? It seems like there's some kind of a slippery slope here. And I just wanted to understand, because it seems like there's a hierarchy where if you do things that are inside of your department or inside of your school, the way it's being presented, I'm understanding that it's more beneficial for your statement, but to be actually going into these neighborhood schools are to make these visits, which, I mean, understandably, we all have different strengths, and not everybody is energetic. Not everybody is the best presenter. I mean, I've fallen asleep at many. But the question is, who is making that distinction, and why does it not matter if their students are not getting why is it like almost laughed upon when you're engaging with students on things that are very high level and actually introducing them to it and getting them excited about it? I live in Connecticut, and in some areas, just getting people to walk into the schools is like, whoa. So please explain who's making these distinctions, because it is somewhat, I don't know, I'm still out in the fields about this one, thinking about it.
Yeah, I appreciate it. And I think you bring up a really important piece that for some of our colleagues, setting foot into a K-12 classroom may be transformative for them in really helping them think more broadly about who they're serving and who they might be able to serve. I think that's a really important piece. I do think it's really important that we are respectful to the needs and constraints of K-12 teachers. So the extent to which the research that I'm doing is not aligned with students' like current curricular pathways in their context may mean that my idea to bring it to a classroom is not helpful or welcome. And I think we are often in a context where the skills and knowledge of K-12 teachers are dismissed. And I may know much more computer science than a K-12 teacher, but I think it's really important as we're doing BPC work that we're not presuming to be better at educating K-12 students than K-12 teachers. So that's one piece that informs my position on it. Again, the NSF, when you submit a BPC plan with a NSF proposal, the program officer is going to decide whether or not you have an adequate plan. Like that is not a thing that we as a community do or BPC Net does. But I do think I hear a common refrain from industry saying that they can't broaden participation because colleges and universities haven't broadened participation. And I hear from college faculty that they can't do anything because K-12 hasn't broadened participation in computing. And I think that if we each focus on improving the culture, climate, and policies within our own context, that might be where we can be most impactful. So I think it's like multifaceted where I'm like, let's not be disrespectful to K-12 teachers, and let's try and be as impactful as we can be if we're in our context. But again, like who makes this decision? A PI decides what they want to propose, and they're probably going to be able to talk the program officer into it.
Erica?
But I mean, I'm just saying in my institution, we're actually reading this book called Stuck in the Shallow End, and it's by Jane Margolis is the lead on it. And we're doing it as an institution, like as a college, we have about 30 to 40 people that are faculty, staff, and students that are all participating in this. So one of the things that we do have is that there is a divide in many aspects. And I'm not saying that anyone is less than or more than the other. But I think that there needs to be a collaborative nature. And I mean, I'm just wondering, is this coming from NSF, this idea that, you know, if you are doing certain things, you shouldn't do this, because I want to make sure that when these statements are written, that they're written well? Or is it just a personal idea of what it is? Because to be quite honest, it's really important and at least from my point of view, it's very important for faculty to be able to break down their information into bits so that they can be used in classrooms and given to community members, and not just classrooms, to parents when we're talking about people from historically marginalized populations. But I'm not going to get really deep into it, but like, where is this coming from?
Yeah, and I'm happy to take responsibility that it's coming from me. Colleen Lewis, I think that there is tons and tons of curriculum that's available for K-12 students. And I think K-12 teachers are best positioned to design and revise that curriculum. They know their students very well to be able to make that curriculum and adapt that curriculum to be culturally responsive. That's sort of my take. But that faculty members could go into K-12 classrooms. That seems fine. Maybe potentially more impactful for addressing the problem you were mentioning was the extent to which K-12 faculty could host a summit to address the equitable expansion of computer science instruction at the K-12 level. So ESEP has a resource for having a summit that an academic institution would host that brings together stakeholders to address these inequities in K-12 access. But I think the curriculum that was designed in response to Stuck in the Shallow End, the Exploring Computer Science curriculum, is awesome. And I think it would be more, Colleen Lewis thinks it would be much more impactful to expand access to the Exploring Computer Science curriculum that has been designed by high school computer science teachers than it would be for a random faculty member to design new curriculum.
Hey, this is Diane Levitt. I'm going to jump in for 1 second because at Cornell Tech, we actually facilitate opportunities like this. And I would say that there are great opportunities for faculty to engage in K-12 when that is part of the context of a larger relationship that is supported by educators, either by your education department, or in our case, I have a team of computer science master teachers who facilitate the relationship between our faculty and K-12 students. And in the context of a broad partnership with schools, where you are meeting the needs of teachers that they have expressed, please come to our computer science fair and be judges. Please come and give a tech talk on something we can understand. Give us space to study for the AP test during spring break when our school is closed. Then that can be great. I think what Colleen is reacting to is the fact that sometimes faculty just parachute into schools to do a thing out of context, and that doesn't really have so much leverage.